Hi, this is Maxime Verbist, and it is our 9th video on the destiny. A little warning. This ultimate video is oriented to something which is quite unpleasant to discuss, because it implies that we all have some flaws. So if you see yourself as someone who has no flaws at all, and that is only others who have problems, I recommend you not to watch that video. In many aspects, what we call mental health is very similar to the physical health. So our physical health is not something black or white. We are not 100% healthy or 100% sick. There are minor forms of sickness. There are some days that we just lack energy. Could we say that we are sick? Probably not. Physical health has ups and downs, and mental health has even more ups and downs. That means we build it up at any moment. In any circumstance, we get into health or we get into sickness. And all those very impressive pathologies that we see in the manuals of psychiatry are just what's happened when the balance is seriously lost. So, destiny is deeply embedded in mental health because destiny will condition what we call the emotional stability. Whenever our mind functions at its best, it allows an emotional stability that is not to be conceived as a very fixed mental state, but most of all, as a balance between different tendencies of the mind. And especially if we see it in the interpersonal context, healthy relationships are based on the capacity to adapt to the right register. And in this video, we will describe 7 basic registers: power, or who decides what; role, who takes care of who; projects, what are we going to do; play, is this a joke; skills, how to do things properly; intimacy, who is close to me; and status, what are my rights and my privilege. Maybe you have recognized the feature of the 7 destiny. And actually, every human being is capable to act upon the 7 aspects of his consciousness. And obviously, we are all specialized in one way or another. But what is a healthy mind? It's just a mind that can move and adapt to the right register at the right moment. Till you have that flexibility to adapt and to arrive to the right register in the right situation, your relational and emotional life will be stable. That means on the day-to-day basis, you build up a healthy mental health. And there is another consequence, is that the more you get specialized in one of the aspects, the strongest you are in one dimension, the more you need to train yourself into the flexibility to use the other register. Otherwise, your personality gets completely unbalanced. And we can see that with some people who demonstrate great talent in one aspect and are completely disastrous in the rest of their life, because that balance is lost. It may happen several times a day, but the consciousness gets sometimes stuck into one of the modes. And we will call that state a passion. It is called a passion because in that mental state, we concentrate all our relational and mental expectancy to 1/7 of our mental capacity. So a passion is a state of high motivation and low consciousness. So we have described 7 passions, and of course they are very related to the 7 destiny. But every human being is capable to experience all the 7 passions. And of course, we do have a tendency to fall into the passion that is related to our destiny. So patience is not the end of the world. We do it several times per day, and when we are in a healthy mindset, we go back to health very quickly. And the destructivity of those small moments of passion is very low. So usually the mind keeps healthy. But when we get stuck into one passion, this will deregulate our relationship and our emotional stability. That is how we start to fall downhill. And some people are completely prisoner of their passions, and modern psychology call it personality disorder. But remember, every personality has its own tendency to the disorder, and the true psychiatric personality disorder is just a personality that is massively dysregulated. So mental health can be conceived as a balance between forces. It is very important to understand that the 7 register tends to balance each other. That means that mental health is one register being balanced to its opposite one. Therefore, if you look at the schema, we have 7 registers organized in 3 pairs of opposites. And those 3 pairs will represent 3 fundamental aspects of relationship that should be kept into balance: respect, trust, and patience. Let's examine respect. Respect is the product of the balance between 2 different facets. One is power and the other one is status. That means that whenever we can find some place for power and for some place to the status, the result will be a mindset that will allow us a healthy sense of respect. But if one of the poles takes over the other, and we tend to consider respect only as a matter of power or only as a matter of status, respect gets one-eyed and it gets to very unhealthy behavior. Paranoia in one side, narcissism in the other. Let's explore those 2 passions. Paranoia is typical to the warrior. Paranoia is that very known mindset when we start to find enemies where there is no a real enemy, and we start enter into conflicts with people on the power issue. We start to imagine they do have intention they don't have. But the problem of paranoia, of course, is that the more we get suspicious, the more we create some aggressive attitude from the people. So people who are trapped in paranoia are in a world of pure power, where everyone would do anything if he wants to harm others. So basically, in the paranoid mindset, there is in one side the allies who will do anything to help you, and the enemies. And there is nothing in between. We all can get narcissistic, but that passion is especially associated with the diplomat. The narcissistic passion is the opposite of paranoia, because what matters is only status, and you base your respect only upon status. And when you behave in that way, you will see the world as a big social scale, and you will try anything to be superior to your interlocutor, or if that interlocutor is far better than you, to come as close as possible to him to enjoy his fame. So in that vision of the world, you divide between the people who are superior, delight, and the people who are inferior. And in between there is nothing. And all relationship is a matter of pride. The second big mental equilibrium is called trust. So trust is a balance between 2 different sectors of relationship. One is the role, who prescribe what everyone is supposed to do towards the other, and the other is intimacy. And a trust will be sound when it's built upon those 2 dimensions who alternates and who compense each other. Whenever that balance is lost, we get a one-eyed trust, being only focused on the role and ticking the box of all the things we are supposed to do in our role, or pure intimacy, where everything gets subjective and it's a matter of feeling. And those passions is the detached passion from the role and the histrionic passion from the intimacy. Detachment is typical to the gardener. Whenever we build up our trust purely upon the role we have and how reliable we are to a role, we enter into a very cold and detached vision of trust. And all relationship will be a matter of accountancy. You have said that and you haven't complied to it. Or who owns what to who. The only thing that matters in that passion is that both should demonstrate how reliable they are, how loyal they are. And if they are not loyal, they are irresponsible. So that's the two options. You are loyal or irresponsible. And you have to prove that you are doing what you are supposed to do according to your role. And this approach is extremely cold. And if, according to our calculation, people do not comply to their own role, we may just letting them go because we feel that the contract is not respected. This approach of relationship makes it very difficult to discuss anything that has to do with emotion and subjectivity. That makes the relation unbearable. In the other side, when we just see relationship through the lens of intimacy, we tend to fall into that passion that nowadays we call histrionism. We all can get histrionic, but that passion is typically associated with the preacher. And the histrionic mindset is all about emotion, expressing emotion and dividing the world into two categories. The people who are exactly like us, that we can understand 100%, we feel exactly what they feel, and the people who are not, who are complete strangers. There is nothing in between. And most of all, there is no boundaries. There is no such thing as a role that will mediate, that will prescribe who is supposed to do what. So everyone is supposed to do everything all the time. That makes the relationship unbearable. Another feature that is typical to histrionism is the constant misunderstanding about intimacy. As they feel intimate with everyone, they will share part of their life or part of their anatomy as if you would be intimate. And for the people who receive that, it feels like they don't want to be that close and they feel like pushing them away. We may call the third equilibrium of mental health patience. And patience is the capacity to balance two different sectors of relationship. One is the project, and it is the idea of what we are going to do. And the other, it's the skills. It's how we are going to do precisely. Whenever the project and the skills are in balance, there is a mental quality called patience that is present in the relationship. A passion purely based on a project will yield into a passion of dependency, and a patience based upon skills will fall into a passion of obsessiveness. Let's explore those two passions. We all can get dependent, but that passion is typical from the merchant. If we just build our patience upon the project we may do together, the only thing that matters is the activity and enjoying the activity with someone. That means that all the relationship is about finding an activity to do together. And this makes the relationship unbearable, because if it's a matter of activity, who will decide what is the activity to do? who will be the leader and who will be the follower? And what if the other do not want to follow? Well, that's very simple. If that person refuses to interact with us, we change and we try to get someone else. Well, we can do it by ourselves instead of doing with someone. So the patience of dependency will either lead to cling on people or, on the contrary, doing things by our own. And when we have to regulate our emotion, the best way to do it by our own is to take substance, to drink, for instance. A dependency to a substance is just trying to regulate your emotion with a substance and not with an interaction with a human being. When you build your patience just upon the skills and the capacity to achieve precise goals, your relationship fall into the obsessiveness. We all can get obsessive, but that passion is typically associated with a destiny of an artisan. From the obsessive point of view, the world is divided in two categories, the experts and the amateurs. So the experts knows precisely how to do and the amateur is there just to follow. The obsessive mindset is extremely rigid because he only knows one way to do things and he cannot stand a change of plan. He has to stick to the goals and to achieve exactly precisely the goal what is expected. And that is great if you are an engineer because you are paid to do that. But in relationship, it's unbearable. The last sector of relationship is a bit different than the other, and it is play. Play is the central quality that allows a flexible transition from one side to the other. So fundamentally, play is key for mental health. But the problem is that in itself, a pure playful mindset will create a lot of complication in relationship. We all can get passive-aggressive, but that passion is typical from the artist. Due to that excess of self-awareness, you will tend to fall into two opposite mindsets, which are not helpful. You will see everything as a joke or everything as a drama, but in both cases, you will be incapable to bring something significant to the relationship. We all have passions. Do we all need therapy? Of course we don't. Most of people can afford not to pay any attention to their passions and to live a very good life. Actually, there are only two categories of people who really should do something and do some therapy about passions. In one side, the people who suffer from mental health conditions such as chronic depression, anxiety, alcoholism, eating disorder. And of course, you suffer from symptoms that do not seem to have anything in common with passion. But the emotional equilibrium is the ground of your mental health. And what is sapping that ground is passions. So the more you work on passions, the more you are aware that your mind gets under the control of your passions, and the healthiest your mind gets. So in one sense, it's an indirect approach. But it is the basis of the mental health stability, is to have a sound sense of emotional stability. The other category that really needs to pay attention to their passions is the mental health professional. Any mental health professional should be attentive to his own passions in order not to contaminate others. And some lay people who have nothing to do with mental health may also find some interest of being more aware of their own passions in order to alleviate their relationship. We all have passions and they plague all relationship. So the destiny helps us to understand what passion is more likely to happen and what passion we may trigger to others. And it's a fundamental aspect if we want to understand what is going on in the fine details of relationship. If we put aside the destiny of the artist, which is central, all the other destiny has a destiny which is complementary to their own. And for instance, the warrior and the diplomat are complementary. as the gardener and the preacher are complementary, and the merchant and the artisan are also complementary. That means that the sheer presence of, for instance, a gardener for the preacher will have an effect to rebalance his mind. And usually they won't understand each other at all, but one will bring to the other what they need, so they are less likely to fall into passions. So there is an inherent therapeutic alchemy that is possible when you interact with the people from the opposite destiny. That's why you need them. And they don't need to be therapists.